I am gonna approach this from the request Chin had on teacher-student relationship and communication. Communication was already a topic we were gonna have, so that ties in nicely, and I specify it a little bit on the student-teacher relationship and how I regard that. It will also automatically be a bit of an extension to the talk on personalities and even neurotransmitters that we had last week, because ultimately that is how I regard communication. It is understanding psychology and understanding personalities so you can communicate in a way that works for that person. So hopefully I can break down a little bit on how I think to assess the situation and assess the person, to then be able to adjust how I communicate and how that reflects directly when it relates to coaching and as a coach. So first, one thing that I do and remind myself to do all the time is ask myself, how do I want to affect this person? What is it that I'm looking to impact them with? And how can I best go about that? And that is a tricky question, and another reason why it's, to me, such valuable tools to be able to assess a personality and have a lot of tools, so you can kind of, oh, that's that pattern, or that's that sign, that means this, and then you have a framework that you can use to essentially the quickest realize how you need to adjust your communication to be able to help this person or engage with them in general, right? So first of all, a recurring topic for me recently that I highly relate to this is that I think the more we forcefully try to communicate and get our point across and trying to change other people, the more it actually backfires, the less impact we actually have, because we put the other party in a position as feeling that they're wrong, feeling that you think that they are wrong, and that makes them having to defend themselves, or feeling that they have to, and possibly, and it makes them aggressive back to you and saying like, no, I'm not. It's not at all like this, and now it's a battle of who speaks the loudest, or who can articulate the clearest, and it's a competition basically. So that's back to, how can I affect this person the best? How can I impact them? And rarely, maybe never, is that from really trying to change their opinion in a specific way. I think it is more artful and subtle than that, and you have to go about it very cautiously and humbly. So it's basically planting seeds. That was how I approach this. How can I do something or say something to this person so that it triggers something? It triggers a thought, or it just plants a seed that can trigger something later on. Just makes them look at something as a little bit different, and now that can grow, and they can change their mind. That is how I think we actually impact people, whether we recognize it or not. I think it is in a way more indirect way than we would like to think. And that is something we need to remember if we are going to communicate effectively with people, to not make it a bark off and just try to win, or trying to change them and being so damn sure of our own approach, and they just need to look at it like I do. Why can't they see it like I do? Because now there's friction, and it's hard, it's impossible, I would even say, to actually get to make an impact. So humble yourself a bit, take a few steps back, and take a more indirect approach, where you just you're very selective about which seeds you plant, but you just put it out there, and then they're free to do what they please with it. And this is true in just casual conversations with people, and it's probably even further true when you are when it's a relationship like teacher-student, and you're trying to facilitate something in the person, because now you really have to look at again, asking yourself, what am I trying to teach this person? What are I trying to make an impact of? And to then, even with that in mind, not go into the trap and it's like, yeah, obviously they need this, and that's boom, 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 and now you just make them feel bad because they don't agree, or they don't get it, or they don't have it, or you're attacking them too much and they just feel inadequate and they start pushing back. So, right. And now then, how do you adjust? How do you get to realize what is the best way to talk and plant a seed for a specific person? Well, again, that is where personality comes into it. And if we keep it to coaching specific, you very well know that you can say to a certain person one thing, but if you say that same thing to another, it's disastrous. Like, let's say you have a competitive person on your hands, putting something as a challenge, or kind of teasing them a little bit, or I bet you can't do that, might get them going, and it's exactly what you need. But you say that to someone else and they shut down completely and they don't find it fun at all and they just feel bad, right? So that is where you can't have, I don't see any value in having general things that you should be saying. The only general thing I can think of is the principle that I just outlined in really asking and never pushing, and more planting seed and giving them something that has an effect in themselves. So for one person, that if they're competitive, that can be making everything feel like a competition to them and being a bit teasing. And that I would relate to a dopamine thing, and you're kind of trigger, you're playing with their dopamine all the time. You need to facilitate that, they need that input, so you're kind of like making it competitive. Someone else might need the opposite of comforting and saying, no, this is great. We're working on this. Don't worry that it's not what we want it to be. That's what we're working on, right? Obviously, it's not what we want it to be. That's what we're doing, right? That's why we're here. They need that comforting, right? So it just entirely depends on how you communicate, and that's when I'm a proponent of learning about psychology, learning about personality assessing, and that gives you tools to adjust quickly. So that will break down further when we talk and on your own, and perhaps the second neurotransmitter lecture, because that's tools you just have to accumulate. For now, one thing I can say that is hopefully a bit practical, is that once you have those tools, you can start thinking of ways of questions and things to put out there to get information so you can assess them quicker, and making those things a little bit more neutral, so you don't go, oh, that's my grandma does that better than you, what the fuck is that shit. If you say that to a person that you don't really know yet, it's too risky, it's not the right type of person for that, game over, right? So you start off more cautiously and you put out things there to gather the information. So that is in the same way as, okay, let's check if they're a competitive person. Let's check what drives them. How do they respond to a certain way of talking? And you think like this, and now you put it out there, and you very quickly say, oh, that didn't work at all, noted. And now you try to communicate in a different way. You say something else, and it's like, okay, there seems to be something there, and now you move in that direction. So you kind of maneuver yourself and communicate. It's like a real-time trial and error thing, and that requires that you have tools and understanding and some form of pattern recognition. So I'll think of a few practical things that like examples of things you can say that are pretty neutral and doesn't risk alienating people completely, but helps you gather some information and realizing, oh, this is this type of person, I need to talk this way. And yeah, that is one of my favorite things really, once you get there, because you meet a new person and you kind of get a sense for what they're reacting to, and that can be things just like you hear they talk about their interest, or they share a story of their day, and if you have understanding of psychology, you're like, oh, interesting. Well, that's that pattern, right? And now you can base things on that and communicate to that specific individual based on that. And the more you do that, the more information you gather, and the more accurate you can be. So one last thing to cover there, and that of course communication doesn't have to be verbal, and that's something we also have to recognize with this, especially when we're coaching people, that some respond better to physical touch, some needs to see it, some need to be left alone way more and have a sense of independency. And this is of course entirely also dependent on the personality, and something you need to understand. So just pointing out that it's not a point only of how do I verbally communicate, because the takeaway once you assess someone and once you realize where to go, it might mean talk way less, shut up, like put something out there and then back off. And for others, certain personalities, it's, talk, and it doesn't even have to be related to anything. It's just have a good time and connect. Entirely different. So as usual, I just make you feel more unsure of things after the... No, that's not true. I know you guys can appreciate and handle the complexity and it depends conclusions that I always come to. So let's keep it at there for this discussion, and just communicate tomorrow on these things. And I think I have thought of a few examples, and I'll also ask you a few specific questions on this topic, so we really get it going, and then we apply it and communicate together tomorrow, verbally mostly.